In the autumn of 1853, British archaeologist George Dennis stood amid the weathered ruins of ancient Sardis, capital of the once mighty Lydian Empire, his boots crunching against pottery sherds that had lain undisturbed for over 2 millennia, while the golden light of the Anatolian sunset cast long shadows across the remnants of what had been the most prosperous kingdom of the ancient world. The excavation team had been working methodically through the stratified layers of occupation, each shovelful of earth revealing new insights into a civilization that had fundamentally transformed human commerce through their revolutionary invention of coin money. Yet as Dennis brushed the accumulated dust from a fragment of an electrum coin bearing the distinctive lion and bull design of the Lydian royal mint, he could hardly have imagined that he was holding in his hands one of the earliest examples of standardized currency that would eventually reshape the entire economic foundation of human society. The archaeological evidence emerging from the systematic excavations at Sardis, conducted under the auspices of the Ottoman authorities and with the careful documentation methods that were becoming standard practice in mid-19th century archaeology, painted a picture of a sophisticated urban center that had served as the nexus of trade routes, connecting the Greek cities of the Aegean coast with the vast territories of the Persian Empire. While the material culture recovered from the site demonstrated technological innovations in metallurgy, textile production, and architectural engineering that rivaled or exceeded the achievements of their more famous contemporaries. In classical Greece and imperial Rome, the stratigraphy revealed that Sardis showed continuous occupation spanning nearly a millennium, from the earliest Iron Age settlements of the 8th century BCE through the final abandonment of the site in the early medieval period, with each archaeological layer telling its own story of political upheaval, economic prosperity, military conquest, and cultural transformation that collectively chronicled the rise and fall of one of antiquity's most influential yet underappreciated civilizations. The discovery of extensive workshop areas containing sophisticated smelting facilities, along with hundreds of clay molds used for shaping precious metal objects, provided tangible evidence of the industrial scale of Lydian metalworking operations, while the recovery of imported pottery from Greece, Syria, Egypt, and the Black Sea region testified to the extensive commercial networks that the Lydians had established throughout the eastern Mediterranean and beyond. Archaeological analysis of the residential quarters revealed a highly stratified society, with elaborate mansions featuring sophisticated heating systems, decorative mosaics, and private bathhouses situated in stark contrast to the cramped quarters of the artisan districts, where evidence of specialized craft production, including leatherworking, textile manufacturing, and jewelry making, painted a picture of a complex urban economy based on both local production and long-distance trade. The religious precincts uncovered at Sardis demonstrated the syncretic nature of Lydian spiritual practices, combining indigenous Anatolian deities with imported Greek gods and Persian religious elements, while the elaborate burial grounds outside the city walls contained grave goods that reflected both the wealth of Lydian society and their belief in an afterlife that required material provisions for the deceased. The fortification systems discovered during the excavations revealed multiple phases of construction and renovation, indicating the evolving military threats that the Lydians faced throughout their history, from the tribal raids of the early Iron Age through the organized campaigns of the Cimmerian invaders, and ultimately the professional armies of the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great. While the archaeological evidence from the final destruction layer provided stark testimony to the violent end of Lydian independence in 546 BCE, when the Persian forces breached the supposedly impregnable walls of Sardis and brought to a close nearly 3 centuries of Lydian hegemony in western Anatolia. The geographic foundations upon which Lydian civilization developed were fundamentally shaped by the unique geological characteristics of western Anatolia, where the convergence of major river systems, particularly the Hermus and Pactolus rivers, created an environment that was exceptionally conducive to both agricultural prosperity and mineral wealth extraction, while the strategic location of this region at the crossroads between Europe and Asia positioned the early Lydian settlements to serve as intermediaries in the expanding networks of international trade that were beginning to connect the diverse civilizations of the ancient world. During the first millennium BCE, the Hermus River Valley, which served as the heartland of the Lydian kingdom, provided fertile alluvial soils that supported intensive agricultural production of wheat, barley, olives, and grapes, while the river itself served as a crucial transportation artery linking the inland regions of Anatolia with the Greek coastal cities that were emerging as important commercial centers during the same period. The legendary wealth of the Pactolus River, which flowed directly past the site that would eventually become Sardis, derived from the rich deposits of electrum, a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver that were continuously eroded from the mountainous regions upstream and deposited in the riverbed where they could be recovered through relatively simple placer mining techniques that required minimal technological sophistication, but generated enormous wealth for those who controlled access to these resources. The broader geological setting of the region included extensive deposits of other valuable minerals, including copper, iron, lead, and silver, while the forested uplands provided abundant timber resources that were essential for construction, shipbuilding, and the fuel-intensive processes of metal smelting that would become central to Lydian economic prosperity. The Mediterranean climate of the region, characterized by hot, dry summers and mild, wet winters, proved ideal for the cultivation of the traditional trilogy of Mediterranean agriculture, consisting of grain, olives, and grapes, while the natural pastures of the highland areas supported extensive livestock operations that provided meat, dairy products, wool, and leather for both local consumption and export to neighboring regions. The natural defensive advantages of the Lydian heartland were considerable, with the city of Sardis itself constructed on a steep-sided plateau that rose dramatically above the surrounding river valley, providing both commanding views of potential approaching enemies and natural fortifications that could be enhanced through human engineering efforts to create one of the most formidable defensive positions in the ancient world. The river systems that provided such economic advantages also served as natural boundaries that helped to define Lydian territorial claims while simultaneously providing convenient routes for military expeditions into neighboring regions, whether for purposes of conquest, tribute collection, or the suppression of rebellious vassal states that might threaten Lydian commercial interests. The climate patterns of Western Anatolia, influenced by both Mediterranean and continental weather systems, provided sufficient rainfall to support agricultural production without the need for extensive irrigation systems, unlike many other regions of the ancient Near East, while the predictable seasonal variations allowed for the development of sophisticated agricultural calendars that maximize crop yields and enable the accumulation of agricultural surpluses that could support non-agricultural populations engaged in craft production, military service, and administrative functions. The natural transportation routes through the region, including not only the river systems but also the mountain passes that connected the coastal regions with the interior plateaus of Anatolia, positioned the Lydians to control and profit from the increasing volume of trade that flowed between the emerging Greek city-states and the established civilizations of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Iranian plateau, while their central location made Sardis a natural meeting point for merchants, diplomats, and travelers from across the known world. The emergence of distinctly Lydian material culture during the early Iron Age, as documented through systematic archaeological investigations at multiple sites throughout Western Anatolia, represents a complex process of cultural synthesis that combined indigenous Anatolian traditions with technological innovations and artistic influences derived from contact with neighboring civilizations, particularly the Greek cities of the Aegean coast, the Phrygian kingdom of central Anatolia, and the various peoples of the eastern Mediterranean region. who were participating in the expanding networks of international commerce and cultural exchange that characterized this pivotal period in ancient history. The earliest archaeological assemblages that can be definitively identified as Lydian, dating to approximately the 8th century BCE, demonstrate sophisticated ceramic production techniques that utilize locally available clay sources combined with tempering materials and firing methods that produce pottery of exceptional quality and durability. While the decorative motifs employed on these vessels reveal artistic influences from multiple cultural traditions that were being synthesized into a distinctive Lydian aesthetic that would evolve and develop over the subsequent centuries of the kingdom's existence. The typological analysis of Lydian pottery, conducted by modern archaeologists, has identified several distinct phases of stylistic development, beginning with relatively simple geometric designs that reflected broader Iron Age artistic traditions common throughout Anatolia, gradually evolving toward more complex figured scenes that incorporated both mythological themes derived from Greek sources and original Lydian narrative compositions that celebrated local heroes, religious beliefs, and historical events. While the technical quality of the ceramic production consistently improved over time, as Lydian artisans developed increasingly sophisticated kiln designs and firing techniques that allowed for better temperature control and more consistent results, the metalworking traditions of early Lydian society, as evidenced by the numerous tools, weapons, ornaments, and ritual objects recovered from archaeological contexts, demonstrate mastery of advanced techniques including bronze casting, iron forging, precious metalworking, and the production of complex alloys that require precise control of furnace temperatures and chemical compositions. While the distinctive stylistic characteristics of Lydian metalwork, including particular preferences for certain decorative motifs, proportional relationships, and finishing techniques, suggest the existence of well-established craft traditions that were transmitted from master to apprentice through formal training programs that maintain consistent standards of quality and artistic excellence across multiple generations. The architectural remains from early Lydian sites reveal building techniques that combine local stone construction methods with timber framing systems that were well adapted to the seismic conditions of the region, while the urban planning evident at sites like Sardis demonstrates sophisticated understanding of drainage systems, defensive considerations, and the efficient organization of residential, commercial, and ceremonial spaces within the constraints imposed by natural topography and available building materials. The burial practices documented at Lydian cemeteries provide important insights into social organization, religious beliefs, and economic status differentiation within early Lydian society, with grave goods ranging from simple ceramic vessels and iron tools in modest burials to elaborate assemblages of precious metal objects, imported luxury items, and ceremonial weapons in the tombs of elite individuals. While the construction techniques employed in tomb building evolved from simple pit graves covered with stone slabs to sophisticated chamber tombs with corbelled vaulting and elaborate decorative programs that required considerable investment of labor and materials. The agricultural implements recovered from Lydian sites demonstrate technological innovations that increase farming efficiency and crop yields, including improved plow designs that could penetrate the heavy soils of the river valleys more effectively, specialized harvesting tools that reduce grain loss during reaping operations, and storage facilities that protected agricultural surpluses from moisture, rodents, and other sources of spoilage that could threaten food security during periods of poor harvests or military disruption. The textile production equipment found at Lydian sites, including spindle whorls, loom weights, and dyeing facilities, indicates that cloth manufacturing was an important component of the early Lydian economy, with evidence suggesting that Lydian textiles were renowned for their quality and distinctive appearance, incorporating both locally produced fibers from sheep and goats raised in the surrounding countryside and imported materials including silk from Central Asia and cotton from Egypt that were processed using techniques that produce fabrics suitable for both local consumption and export to foreign markets. The religious artifacts recovered from Lydian archaeological contexts reveal a complex spiritual worldview that incorporated elements from various cultural traditions, including indigenous Anatolian fertility cults focused on mother goddess figures, Greek Olympian deities who were adapted to serve local religious needs, and Persian religious concepts related to dualistic cosmology and the worship of Ahura Mazda, while the construction of elaborate temple complexes and the production of sophisticated ritual objects demonstrated the central role that religion played in legitimizing political authority and maintaining social cohesion within Lydian society. The political evolution of the Lydian kingdom from its earliest manifestations as a collection of loosely affiliated tribal chieftainships into a centralized monarchy capable of projecting military power across vast territories and administering complex economic systems represents one of the most remarkable examples of state formation in the ancient world, involving as it did the gradual consolidation of political authority, the development of sophisticated bureaucratic institutions, and the creation of ideological frameworks that could justify and maintain the subordination of diverse populations under a unified royal administration, while simultaneously managing the complex diplomatic relationships with neighboring powers that were essential for maintaining Lydian independence and commercial prosperity. The legendary founder of the Lydian royal dynasty, known to Greek sources as Gyges, emerged around 680 BCE from what appears to have been a period of political instability and social upheaval that may have been precipitated by the devastating raids of the Cimmerian nomads who swept across Anatolia during the late 8th and early 7th centuries BCE, destroying established settlements and disrupting traditional patterns of political organization. While archaeological evidence from this period suggests widespread destruction at many sites, followed by reconstruction efforts that often involved significant changes in settlement patterns, fortification systems, and material culture that may reflect the consolidation of political control under new ruling elites, the establishment of Lydian royal authority under Gyges and his immediate successors required the development of new mechanisms for extracting resources from subject populations, including taxation systems that could generate the revenues necessary to maintain professional military forces, administrative bureaucracies, and the elaborate court culture that served to demonstrate royal power and legitimacy. While the geographical expansion of Lydian territorial control necessitated the creation of provincial administration systems that could effectively govern distant regions while maintaining loyalty to the central government in Sardis through a combination of military intimidation, economic incentives, and the co-optation of local elite groups who could serve as intermediaries between the royal administration and their own communities. The military innovations that enabled Lydian territorial expansion included not only improvements in weapons technology and tactical organization, but also the development of logistical systems capable of supporting extended military campaigns, including supply networks that could provision armies operating far from their home territories, engineering capabilities that could construct and maintain siege equipment for attacking fortified positions, and intelligence-gathering operations that provided commanders with accurate information about enemy strengths, movements, and intentions. While the integration of cavalry forces into Lydian military organization represented a significant tactical innovation that took advantage of the excellent horses raised in the grasslands of central Anatolia and provided Lydian armies with superior mobility and reconnaissance capabilities compared to infantry-based forces that predominated in many neighboring regions. The diplomatic strategies employed by Lydian rulers to manage relationships with neighboring powers demonstrated sophisticated understanding of international politics, including the use of marriage alliances to cement political relationships, tribute systems that acknowledge Lydian supremacy, while allowing vassal states to maintain internal autonomy. commercial agreements that provided mutual economic benefits, while serving Lydian strategic interests, and religious diplomacy that respected local traditions while promoting Lydian cultural influence through the patronage of temple construction and religious festivals that enhanced the prestige of Lydian rulers and their dynasty. The internal administration of the Lydian kingdom required the development of legal systems that could resolve disputes between individuals from different cultural backgrounds, standardized weights and measures that facilitated commercial transactions across the diverse regions under Lydian control, record-keeping systems that could track tax obligations, military service requirements, and judicial decisions across multiple communities and administrative levels, and communication networks that enabled royal decrees to be transmitted rapidly throughout the kingdom, while allowing local administrators to report back to the central government about conditions in their respective regions. The economic policies implemented by Lydian rulers reflected their understanding that political stability depended ultimately upon the prosperity of their subjects, leading to investments in infrastructure projects including road construction, harbor improvements, and urban development that enhanced commercial activity while also serving military and administrative purposes. Support for agricultural development through irrigation projects, land reclamation efforts, and the introduction of new crops that could increase food security and generate export revenues, and the establishment of manufacturing centers that could produce goods for both domestic consumption and international trade while providing employment for urban populations that might otherwise pose political threats to royal authority. The cultural patronage activities of Lydian rulers, including their sponsorship of artistic production, architectural projects, and educational institutions, served multiple purposes including the demonstration of royal wealth and sophistication, the creation of employment opportunities for skilled artisans and intellectuals who might otherwise seek patronage from rival powers, and the development of distinctive Lydian cultural traditions that could enhance social cohesion while distinguishing Lydian civilization from that of neighboring kingdoms, while the encouragement of cultural exchange through the invitation of foreign artists, scholars, and religious teachers to the Lydian court contributed to the cosmopolitan character that became one of the most distinctive features of Lydian civilization and helped to establish Sardis as one of the major cultural centers of the ancient world. The revolutionary development of coin money by the Lydians during the 7th century BCE represents perhaps their most significant and lasting contribution to human civilization, fundamentally transforming not only the mechanisms of commercial exchange but also the conceptual frameworks through which economic value was understood, measured, and manipulated by individuals, communities, and states throughout the ancient world and beyond. While the technological innovations required for the production of standardized currency, the institutional arrangements necessary for maintaining public confidence in the value and authenticity of coins, and the economic theories that justified the use of abstract tokens as representations of real wealth collectively constituted one of the most important intellectual achievements of the ancient world, with implications that continue to influence modern economic systems. The natural occurrence of electrum in the Pactolus River provided the Lydians with the raw material necessary for their monetary innovations, but the transformation of this naturally occurring alloy into standardized units of exchange required the development of sophisticated metallurgical techniques for purifying and refining the electrum, precision measuring instruments capable of ensuring consistent weight standards, artistic skills for creating distinctive designs that would make counterfeiting difficult, and most importantly, the establishment of governmental authority capable of guaranteeing the purity and weight of coins while punishing those who attempted to debase or counterfeit the currency, all of which represented significant technological and institutional innovations that required considerable investment of time, resources, and creative energy before they could be successfully implemented on a scale sufficient to transform the Lydian economy. The earliest Lydian coins, produced sometime around 650 BCE, were small bean-shaped pieces of electrum that bore simple designs including lions, bulls, and other animals that may have served as markers of different denominations or issuing authorities. While the standardization of weight according to a system based on the Lydian stater, which weighed approximately 14.1 grams and served as the basic unit of the monetary system, allowed merchants and consumers to conduct transactions without the need for weighing each individual piece of precious metal, thereby dramatically reducing the time and effort required for commercial exchanges, while simultaneously reducing opportunities for fraud and disputes over the value of payment offered for goods and services. The economic impact of Lydian monetary innovations extended far beyond the immediate practical benefits of standardized currency, creating new possibilities for the accumulation and storage of wealth that were not dependent upon the ownership of land or livestock, enabling the development of credit systems that allowed individuals to borrow against future earnings or expected revenues from commercial ventures, facilitating the calculation of profits and losses from trading activities through the establishment of common units of measurement that could be applied consistently across different types of goods and services, and most significantly, providing governments with new mechanisms for collecting taxes, paying salaries to soldiers and officials, and financing public works projects that enhance the power and prestige of ruling authorities while contributing to the overall prosperity of their subjects. The spread of Lydian monetary practices to other regions of the ancient world occurred through multiple channels, including direct political conquest, which imposed Lydian administrative systems upon subject populations, commercial relationships that demonstrated the practical advantages of using standardized currency for international trade, diplomatic exchanges that brought foreign observers into contact with Lydian economic institutions, and cultural diffusion through the movement of merchants, artisans, and scholars who carried knowledge of Lydian innovations back to their home communities, where local adaptations of the basic principles were developed to suit different economic conditions and cultural preferences. While the adoption of coin money by the Greek city-states, the Persian Empire, and eventually the Roman Republic and Empire created a monetary system that spanned most of the known world and provided the foundation for commercial relationships that connected distant regions and networks of economic interdependence. The technological challenges involved in coin production required the development of specialized equipment, including dies for stamping designs onto coin blanks, furnaces capable of achieving the high temperatures necessary for melting and refining precious metals, precision balances for ensuring accurate weights, and quality control procedures for maintaining consistent standards across large production runs. While the artistic aspects of coin design evolved to incorporate increasingly sophisticated imagery that served not only aesthetic purposes but also important political and religious functions, by displaying royal portraits, religious symbols, and commemorative scenes that reinforced the authority of issuing governments and communicated important cultural values to users of the currency. The security measures developed by the Lydians to prevent counterfeiting included the use of distinctive designs that were difficult to replicate without access to official dies, the incorporation of specific metallurgical characteristics that could be verified through testing procedures known to merchants and money changers, the establishment of penalties for counterfeiting that were severe enough to deter most potential violators, and the creation of inspection systems that allowed for the detection and removal of fake coins from circulation before they could undermine confidence in the currency system. While the international recognition of Lydian coins as reliable stores of value led to their acceptance in markets throughout the Eastern Mediterranean and beyond, creating what was effectively the first international currency system in human history. The economic theories that justified the use of coin money represented sophisticated understanding of abstract concepts, including the relationship between real wealth and symbolic representations of value, the role of governmental authority, and maintaining public confidence in currency systems. The importance of standardization for facilitating commercial transactions across cultural and political boundaries, and the potential for monetary policy to influence economic conditions through the manipulation of money supply, interest rates, and exchange rates. While the practical implementation of these theoretical insights required the development of financial institutions including banks, money-changing establishments, and credit agencies that could provide the services necessary for a monetary economy to function effectively on a large scale. The religious beliefs and practices of the Lydian people represented a complex synthesis of indigenous Anatolian spiritual traditions, Greek mythological concepts, and Persian theological innovations, creating a distinctive religious system that served not only the spiritual needs of individual believers, but also important social and political functions including the legitimization of royal authority, the maintenance of community cohesion, and the regulation of economic activities through the establishment of moral frameworks that govern commercial relationships, legal proceedings, and social interactions. While the archaeological evidence for Lydian religious practices, including temple architecture, ritual objects, votive offerings, and burial goods, provides important insights into the worldview of this ancient civilization and helps to explain the cultural values that shape their approach to politics, economics, and social organization. The indigenous Anatolian religious traditions that form the foundation of Lydian spirituality centered around the worship of powerful female deities associated with fertility, agriculture, and the natural cycles of birth, growth, death, and regeneration, including Cybele, the great mother goddess who was believed to control the fertility of both the earth and human populations. Artemis of Ephesus, whose cult combined Greek and Anatolian elements in the worship of a multifaceted deity who protected hunters, wild animals, and virginal purity while also serving as a patron of commercial activities, and various local goddesses whose influence was limited to specific geographical regions, but who played important roles in the religious life of particular communities. While the male deities of the Lydian pantheon generally occupied subordinate positions relative to these powerful female figures, reflecting perhaps the matrilineal aspects of early Anatolian social organization, or the economic importance of agricultural activities that were often associated with female labor and expertise. The influence of Greek religious concepts on Lydian spiritual practices became increasingly pronounced during the 6th century BCE, as cultural exchanges between the Greek cities of the Aegean coast and the Lydian kingdom intensified through commercial relationships, diplomatic contacts, and military conflicts, leading to the identification of Lydian deities with their Greek counterparts, and the adoption of Greek mythological narratives that were adapted to serve Lydian religious and political purposes, including the worship of Zeus as a supreme male deity who could serve as a divine patron for Lydian kings, the incorporation of Apollo as a god of prophecy whose oracles could provide divine guidance for political decision-making, and the adoption of Dionysiac festivals that combined religious observance with social celebrations that strengthened community bonds, while providing opportunities for the display of royal generosity through the sponsorship of public entertainment, feasts, and ceremonial activities that demonstrated the prosperity and piety of Lydian rulers. The impact of Persian religious traditions on Lydian spirituality became particularly significant after the conquest of the kingdom by Cyrus the Great in 546 BCE, when Zoroastrian concepts including dualistic cosmology, the worship of Ahura Mazda as the supreme deity of light and truth, and the emphasis on moral choices between good and evil began to influence Lydian religious thought and practice, while the Persian policy of religious tolerance allowed traditional Lydian religious practices to continue, alongside the introduction of new theological concepts, creating a syncretic religious system that incorporated elements from multiple traditions while maintaining distinctive characteristics. that reflected the particular historical experiences and cultural preferences of the Lydian people. The temple architecture of the Lydians demonstrated sophisticated engineering capabilities and artistic sensibilities that were influenced by both Greek and Persian architectural traditions, while maintaining distinctive features that reflected local preferences and building techniques, including the use of local stone materials that were quarried from sites near Sardis, the incorporation of sculptural decorations that combined Lydian, Greek, and Persian artistic motifs, and the development of architectural forms that were adapted to local climatic conditions while conforming to religious requirements for the proper worship of various deities. While the largest and most impressive of these religious structures, including the great temple of Artemis at Sardis, rivaled similar structures in Athens, Ephesus, and Persepolis in terms of their scale, artistic sophistication, and the resources required for their construction and maintenance. The ritual practices associated with Lydian religious observances included elaborate ceremonial processions that moved through the streets of major cities, involving hundreds or thousands of participants dressed in distinctive costumes and carrying sacred objects, musical instruments, and offerings for the deities. Sacrificial ceremonies that involved the ritual slaughter of animals, whose meat was then distributed among the participants, and communal feasts that strengthened social bonds, while demonstrating the generosity of the sponsoring authorities. Oracular consultations that allowed individuals and communities to seek divine guidance for important decisions involving marriage, business ventures, military campaigns, and political policies, and seasonal festivals that celebrated the agricultural cycle, honored particular deities, and provided opportunities for social interaction, entertainment, and the reinforcement of cultural values through dramatic performances, athletic competitions, and artistic displays. The burial practices of the Lydians reflected their beliefs about the afterlife and the continued existence of the deceased in some form that required material provisions, leading to the construction of elaborate tombs that were filled with grave goods including food, drink, clothing, jewelry, weapons, tools, and other objects that the deceased might need in the afterlife. While the differentiation in tomb construction and grave goods between elite and common burials reflected social status distinctions that were believed to continue after death, with royal and noble tombs featuring sophisticated architectural designs, rich decorative programs, and enormous quantities of valuable objects that demonstrated both the wealth of the deceased and the expectations that they would continue to play important roles in some form of spiritual realm. The moral and ethical dimensions of Lydian religion emphasize concepts including honor, hospitality, justice, and loyalty that served important social functions by establishing behavioral standards that promoted social stability and cooperation. While the religious sanctions associated with violations of these moral principles, including divine punishment for oath-breaking, inhospitality to strangers, and injustice toward the weak or defenseless, provided powerful incentives for individuals to conform to community standards even when immediate practical benefits might be gained through antisocial behavior. And the integration of these moral concepts into legal procedures, commercial practices, and political decision-making helped to create institutional frameworks that could maintain social order and promote economic prosperity even as Lydian society became increasingly complex and diverse through territorial expansion and cultural exchange with neighboring civilizations. The military organization and warfare practices of the Lydian kingdom represented sophisticated adaptations of contemporary military technologies and tactical innovations to the particular geographical, political, and economic conditions that characterize their strategic environment, incorporating elements borrowed from neighboring civilizations, while developing distinctive approaches to army organization, logistics, fortification design, and campaign strategy that enabled a relatively small kingdom to project military power across vast territories and maintain political control over diverse populations for nearly 2 centuries. before succumbing to the superior resources and organizational capabilities of the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great. While the archaeological evidence for Lydian military practices, including weapons, armor, fortification systems, and battle sites, provides important insights into the technological capabilities and strategic thinking that characterized one of the most successful military powers of the ancient world. The foundation of Lydian military power rested upon their ability to field effective cavalry forces that took advantage of the excellent horses raised in the grasslands of central and western Anatolia, combined with the wealth generated by their control of gold and silver mining operations and international trade networks that provided the financial resources necessary to maintain professional military forces, purchase high-quality weapons and equipment, and sustain extended military campaigns that might last for months or years. While the strategic location of the Lydian kingdom, at the intersection of major trade routes between Europe and Asia, positioned their armies to control key transportation corridors and derive significant economic benefits from the regulation of commercial traffic that could be used to finance further military expansion and the development of increasingly sophisticated military technologies. The evolution of Lydian military organization from the tribal warrior bands of the early Iron Age to the professional armies of the classical period involved the development of hierarchical command structures that could coordinate the activities of different military units, specialized training programs that produce soldiers with expertise in particular weapon systems and tactical formations, standardized equipment that ensured compatibility between different units and simplified logistics requirements and support services including medical care, engineering capabilities, and intelligence gathering operations that enhance the effectiveness of military operations while reducing the risks and costs associated with warfare. While the integration of foreign mercenaries and allies into Lydian military forces provided access to specialized military skills and technologies while also serving diplomatic purposes, by creating bonds of mutual interest and obligation with neighboring peoples who might otherwise pose threats to Lydian security. The weapons technology employed by Lydian military forces reflected both indigenous innovations and adaptations of equipment developed by other civilizations, including iron swords that were superior in durability and effectiveness to the bronze weapons of earlier periods, composite bows that provided greater range and penetrating power than simple wooden bows, spears designed for both mounted and infantry combat that could be used effectively in different tactical situations, and defensive equipment including helmets, shields, and body armor that protected soldiers while allowing sufficient mobility for effective combat operations. While the distinctive characteristics of Lydian weapons, including particular preferences for certain blade shapes, decorative motifs, and construction techniques, suggest the existence of specialized armaments industries that could produce high-quality military equipment in sufficient quantities to equip entire armies while maintaining consistent standards of quality and performance. The siege warfare capabilities of the Lydian military included both offensive techniques for attacking fortified positions and defensive strategies for protecting their own cities and strategic locations from enemy assault, involving the development of specialized siege equipment including battering rams, siege towers, catapults, and tunneling operations that could breach even the strongest fortifications, while the construction and improvement of defensive systems at key locations including Sardis, regional administrative centers, and border fortresses demonstrated sophisticated understanding of military engineering principles, including the optimal positioning of walls and towers, the integration of natural geographical features into defensive plans, and the provision of adequate supplies and communication systems that could enable defended positions to withstand extended sieges. The logistical systems that supported Lydian military operations represented remarkable achievements in organizational planning and resource management. including supply networks that could provision armies operating far from their home territories. Through a combination of pre-positioned supply depots, foraging operations, and requisitions from local populations, transportation systems that could move men, equipment, and supplies efficiently over long distances using both land and water routes, and administrative procedures that could coordinate the complex activities involved in mobilizing, equipping, deploying, and sustaining military forces while maintaining accurate records of personnel, equipment, and expenses that were essential for effective military planning and financial management. The tactical innovations developed by Lydian military commanders included the coordination of cavalry and infantry forces in combined arms operations that maximized the advantages of each type of unit while minimizing their respective weaknesses. The use of feigned retreats and other deception tactics that could lure enemies into disadvantageous positions. The employment of intelligence networks that provided accurate information about enemy movements and intentions, and the development of rapid deployment capabilities that allow Lydian forces to respond quickly to emerging threats, or to exploit tactical opportunities that might arise during the course of military campaigns. While the strategic concepts that guided Lydian military policy emphasized the importance of maintaining interior lines of communication, the value of securing key geographical positions that could control important transportation routes, and the necessity of maintaining diplomatic relationships with potential allies who could provide military assistance or at least remain neutral during conflicts with major powers. The impact of military considerations on Lydian political and economic development included the necessity of maintaining military forces that consume significant portions of state revenues, the importance of military success in legitimizing royal authority and maintaining political stability, the role of military conquest and acquiring new territories that could provide additional resources and populations, and the influence of military requirements on technological development, urban planning, and social organization. While the ultimate failure of Lydian military power in the face of Persian expansion demonstrated both the limitations of their strategic resources and the exceptional capabilities of their conquerors, whose victory over the Lydians represented a crucial step in the creation of the largest empire that the ancient world had yet seen and marked the end of Lydian independence, while beginning a new chapter in the history of Western Anatolia under Persian rule. The artistic achievements and architectural innovations of the Lydian civilization represented sophisticated syntheses of indigenous Anatolian traditions, with influences derived from Greek, Persian, and Mesopotamian sources, creating distinctive aesthetic traditions that reflected both the cosmopolitan character of Lydian society and the particular cultural values that emphasized luxury, refinement, and the display of wealth as markers of social status and political authority. While the archaeological evidence for Lydian artistic production, including sculptures, paintings, decorative objects, and architectural remains, demonstrates the high level of technical skill and creative imagination that characterized Lydian craftsmen and provides important insights into the cultural ideals and social structures that shaped this remarkable civilization during its 3 centuries of independence and prosperity. The sculptural traditions of the Lydians encompass both monumental works, designed for public display in temples, palaces, and civic spaces, and smaller decorative objects intended for private use, in domestic settings, religious observances, and burial contexts, with the monumental sculptures demonstrating sophisticated understanding of anatomical representation, proportional relationships, and the manipulation of stone, bronze, and other materials to achieve desired aesthetic effects, while the smaller sculptural works revealed remarkable attention to detail and technical precision in the rendering of human figures, animals, mythological scenes, and abstract decorative patterns that served both aesthetic and symbolic functions. Within Lydian cultural contexts, The influence of Greek sculptural traditions on Lydian artistic production became increasingly evident during the 6th century BCE as cultural exchanges between the Lydian kingdom and the Greek cities of the Aegean coast intensified through commercial relationships, diplomatic contacts, and the movement of artists and craftsmen between different regions, leading to the adoption of Greek techniques for representing the human form. The incorporation of Greek mythological themes into Lydian artistic programs, and the development of hybrid artistic styles that combine Greek technical innovations with traditional Lydian aesthetic preferences and symbolic systems, while the distinctively Lydian characteristics of these sculptural works, including particular approaches to facial features, drapery treatment, and compositional organization, suggest that local artistic traditions maintain their vitality and distinctiveness even as they absorbed influences from neighboring civilizations. The architectural achievements of the Lydians included both religious structures, designed to honor the gods and demonstrate royal piety, and secular buildings intended to serve administrative, commercial, and residential functions, with the religious architecture demonstrating sophisticated engineering capabilities and the construction of large-scale temple complexes that rivaled similar structures in Greece and Persia, while the secular architecture revealed innovative approaches to urban planning, defensive fortification, and the creation of comfortable living spaces that took advantage of local climatic conditions and available building materials while conforming to cultural preferences for privacy, luxury, and the display of social status through architectural elaboration. The great temple of Artemis at Sardis, which served as the most important religious center of the Lydian kingdom and one of the largest temple complexes in the ancient world, demonstrated the architectural ambitions and engineering capabilities of Lydian builders through its massive scale, sophisticated structural systems, and elaborate decorative programs that incorporated sculptural elements, painted decorations, and precious metal ornaments in an integrated artistic scheme that served both religious and political purposes by honoring the goddess while simultaneously celebrating the wealth and piety of the royal dynasty that sponsored its construction and maintenance. The urban planning evident at Sardis and other major Lydian cities reflected sophisticated understanding of the practical requirements for efficient city administration, commercial activities, and defense against military attack, including the organization of residential districts according to social status and occupational specialization, the provision of adequate water supply and drainage systems that could maintain public health and prevent flood damage, the construction of wide streets and public squares that could accommodate commercial activities and ceremonial processions. Next part, search in my YouTube videos.